We're diving into the staggering failure of government oversight that allowed fraudsters to steal $250 million meant for hungry children, turning public aid into private jets and Porsches. Welcome to the deep dive.
Today, we are undertaking a really critical deep dive into the massive Feeding Our Future fraud scheme in Minnesota. Attorney General Merrick Garland called it the nation's largest pandemic relief fraud, and our sources show exactly why.
Yeah, and those sources, they really lay bare a monumental betrayal of trust. The core fact is this: over $250 million was siphoned from the federal child nutrition program.
Money that was specifically there to feed children during the COVID lockdowns.
Exactly.
And the scope of the theft. It's almost impossible to grasp. At their peak, this network claimed they were serving 120,000 meals every single day.
120,000.
But when prosecutors audited the money, they found that only about 3% of the total funds were actually spent on food for children.
3%. That is just, it's a shocking statistic.
Unbelievable.
So the other 97%, that money didn't just sit in a bank somewhere, did it?
Oh, no. It was immediately converted into luxury assets. I mean, we're talking within days of being wired from the state.
Things like real estate, right. I saw mentions of multiple lakefront properties in Prior Lake, Minnesota.
Lakefront properties, high-end pickup trucks, and of course the cars that grab all the headlines. A 2021 Porsche Macan S.
A Porsche.
A 2022 Tesla Model Y. It goes on.
And it wasn't just local. The money went global almost instantly.
Right. Documents show funds were used for, lavish international travel. There was a honeymoon in an overwater villa in the Maldives, jewelry bought in Dubai.
Okay, let's unpack this. $250 million vanishes, 97% of the aid is stolen, and criminals are brazenly flashing Porsches. How does this level of audacious theft go unnoticed for so long?
Well, that's the core question, isn't it? We've relied heavily on the federal indictments, which map out the money laundering. We also have DOJ records on the trials. But to understand the failure, the key source is the investigative reports.
And they point to one thing over and over:
inadequate oversight by the Minnesota Department of Education, or MDE.
So our deep dive is going to follow the life cycle of this theft. We'll start with the three-tiered structure they built, then the shocking methods they used to fake the data.
And then trace the laundering and, crucially, land on the breakdown in government accountability that made it all possible.
Right. So where did the opportunity even come from?
It starts with the pandemic waivers. The USDA was scrambling to make sure kids got fed, so they relaxed the rules for the federal child nutrition program.
And two of those changes were just disastrously exploited, weren't they?
Completely. First, standard monitoring, like site visits, was waived. And second, for-profit restaurants were allowed to participate for the first time.
It basically removed all the guardrails right when a tidal wave of money was coming into the system.
Exactly. And to understand the fraud, you can think of it like a criminal organization acting as a sort of general contractor. It had three distinct tiers. Tier 1 was the sponsor, the gateway. This was the nonprofit Feeding Our Future, led by Aimee Bock.
They were the intermediary with the state.
Right. And crucially, they were allowed to keep 10 to 15% of all the money as an administrative fee.
So the more fraud they processed, the richer they got.
Precisely. They collected over $18 million in fees in 2021 alone. It's a powerful financial incentive to just rubber stamp everything.
Then you had Tier 2, the sites, the fronts.
These were dozens of shell nonprofits. They had names that sounded legitimate, like Think Tech Act, but they were operating out of vacant commercial spaces, sometimes even just parking lots.
They only existed on paper.
Only on paper. And finally, Tier 3 was the vendors, the funnels. This is where the cash was liquidated.
So restaurants like Empire Cuisine and Market, they were supposed to be catering.
Supposed to be. Instead, they were the main mechanism to launder the stolen money, turn federal checks into cash, wire transfers, cars, you name it.
And what's fascinating here is just the speed of the expansion.
Oh, the speed is everything. Feeding Our Future went from about $3.4 million in 2019 to nearly $200 million in 2021.
That kind of exponential growth should have set off every alarm bell in the building.
You'd think so. And the whole system was corrupted from the inside by bribery. The sources detail a pay-to-play kickback scheme.
So the fake sites were paying bribes directly to Feeding Our Future employees.
Yes, disguised as consulting fees to make sure their fraudulent claims sailed through without any questions.
Which brings us to the actual fabrication. I mean, the disrespect they had for the process is just It's breathtaking. A small storefront claimed to be serving 3,250 children.
Twice a day.
Twice a day. That's almost double the size of a large high school, all being fed out of a little retail space.
And the methods they used to back up these numbers,
Yeah.
this is maybe the most memorable part of the investigation. They needed thousands of names for their rosters, so they just fabricated them.
How?
They use websites like, and you can't make this up, www.listarandomnames.com.
You're kidding me. They literally outsourced creating fake children to the internet.
They did. But the program only pays for kids, right?
Right.
So how do you make sure the random names qualify?
Right. How do you assign ages?
Microsoft Excel formulas. They just wrote a simple formula to randomly insert ages between 7 and 17 into the roster. It was automated fraud.
And no one ever checked.
It seems not. One fake roster claimed 3,600 children. When investigators cross-referenced it, only 103 names actually matched students in the local school district.
Wow. And because the money was flowing so freely, the laundering was simple. Let's take Aimee Bock, who just got sentenced to 10 years.
Right. He funneled his proceeds through a company called Nur Consulting, LLC. A consulting company is a perfect front because it's easy to justify large payments for, phantom services.
And those consulting fees were then used to buy what?
A 2021 Dodge Ram pickup for over $64,000. A 2021 Hyundai Santa Fe for $35,000. The money meant for a child's plate went directly to a car dealership.
This level of confidence, using fake name websites, the crazy claims, it's only possible if they knew the system designed to stop them was broken.
Or paralyzed. And this is where we have to talk about the failure of government oversight.
The legislative auditor's reports are clear. They say the opportunity was created by inadequate oversight by the MDE.
And we need to remember the MDE's job was to review applications, audit sites, check the numbers. But they were structurally unprepared and, more importantly, they were scared.
And they had warnings, didn't they? As early as 2019, MDE officials were flagging concerning behavior from Aimee Bock.
They saw it coming. They had the information, but they failed to act decisively. And then came the paralyzing element, the legal threats.
This is the key. When MDE finally started to push back on the absurd claims.
Feeding Our Future didn't comply. They sued. They accused the state of Minnesota of discrimination based on race, national origin, color, and religion.
And that tactic was devastatingly effective.
It put the state in a bind. Do your job and face a public, expensive lawsuit where you're branded as discriminatory, or just approve the funds and avoid the fight.
And the state retreated.
It had a chilling effect on all oversight. And it got worse when a judge stepped in. A Minnesota judge found no legal basis to stop the payments in early 2021.
So the court forced them to keep paying the fraudsters.
And then later, that same judge held the MDE in contempt of court and fined them $47,500 for processing the grants too slowly.
Let me get this straight. The state agency was fined for trying to slow down payments that were clearly fraudulent.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the whole system was so paralyzed by threats of lawsuits that it protected the fraudsters instead of the taxpayers. The MDE's fear was the shield.
And the criminals knew it. The indictments read like a shopping list for the newly rich.
The real estate portfolio is proof. Lakefront lots, single-family homes, and overseas wire transfers to buy property in Nairobi, Kenya.
And it wasn't even hidden. I mean, the evidence included photos of stacks of cash being texted between them.
It's a profound lack of concern about being caught, just open defiance.
But accountability is finally being delivered.
It is. The total number of people indicted has reached 78, with over 50 who have pled guilty. We're seeing major sentences, too. Abdiaziz Farah got 28 years. Mohammed Jama Ismail, 12 years.
And to show their contempt for the justice system, Abdimajid Nur, the guy who bought the trucks, was charged with trying to bribe a juror.
With $120,000 in cash, they tried to buy their way out of the courtroom just like they bought their way through the regulatory system.
But even with the convictions, what about the money?
That's the grim part for taxpayers. Prosecutors estimate only about $75 million of the $250 million has been recovered. The rest is just gone.
So what does this all mean? The Feeding Our Future case exposed this catastrophic vulnerability. The structure was a facade built on shell companies, random internet data, and crucially, using political accusations to paralyze the state.
The U.S. Attorney for Minnesota said the state had become a national poster child for public corruption. And the lesson is that these fraud tactics are being exported to other programs.
We're seeing it now in emergency housing, autism therapy, Medicaid.
Exactly. Oversight failure in one program is a green light for criminals to exploit the entire social services system.
The crisis of necessity for some becomes an opportunity for unmitigated greed for others, especially when government is more worried about public perception than protecting public money.
The sobering lesson is that the system was more afraid of being called discriminatory than it was of losing $250 million.
This entire scandal hinged on a judge being convinced that stopping payments meant discrimination. Considering the fraud now being found in so many other programs, you have to ask, are government agencies today still more afraid of accusations of bias, even when those claims are weaponized by criminals, than they are of protecting billions in taxpayer funds? And what is the real cost of that fear to all of us?